Man, oh man. Kendrick Johnson, the young individual that died, yes. When his body was found, he was wrapped up in a mat in a gym. How does that sort of thing happen or take place? As in, who all was involved with that sort of thing happening? That's strange in itself. Like, subscribe, ID in the Discovery Channel. Yes, ID in the Discovery Channel. The links are provided below. Get that Discovery Go app as well. You might in fact want to get that ID Go app as well and combine those two things together. There's various apps in which, yes, we have and include along with that if you like to go there, as in take it there with that. But yes, Kendrick Johnson and this death mat. How does that sort of thing happen? The first question you might want to ask is, was the mat standing upright or was it laying down? See that photograph up above my head? Supposedly, these individuals at the school, yes, in which Johnson himself was attending, it's been stated about the tennis shoes, as in where they would place their tennis shoes around the mats or so. And yet I'm trying to figure out, not just me, but other individuals, how does that sort of thing happen? Where, say, 1 minute you're standing there having conversation and it's etched out on surveillance tape. There was various things etched out on the surveillance tape pertaining to Kendrick Johnson, and the next thing you know, yes, you're dead. Stuffed inside a mat or something. That doesn't seem right. And not only that, you would have thought that maybe surveillance camera, there would be more footage pointing in the direction of who did what and why. People question it if the surveillance tape was in fact, yes, certain details was edited out. I don't know. Who's to say with that sort of thing? We don't even know. Yes, somebody might have, and yet once again, even cameras are known to, yes, even in the footage, didn't I speak about this before? Even in the footage sometimes, yes, live on the coverage as well, have technical difficulties with even surveillance tapes when people are dead and gone. Yes, dying and trying to see who has did what and who was connected. Just because you have footage there don't mean that it's always going to be specific and precise. Hell, even I myself have time where there's technical difficulties, even BBC live on the coverage, where even their cameramen and all the rest, BBC, the news, some of those individuals have technical difficulties all the time. Even I have seen with my own two eyes, right? But yeah, there's been question of if things detailed what was edited out on the surveillance tape, as in somebody could have said killed him, a white individual in the gym that attended the same school as Johnson, if somebody there could have killed him, and then, you know, possibly the school might have edited something out on the surveillance tape to save themselves. Because even liability, say if nothing was wrong with this surveillance tape or all the rest, and him dying, and yes, being in a mat, of all things, a death mat, and yet it wasn't. That's just what I choose to call it. Say if that sort of thing went down, as to say even liability can point on the end of even a school. That too is why you have cover-ups as well. When certain things happen, and I'm not saying that sort of thing. No, I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying that at all, right? But I'm just saying, for the learning, the value experience of the learning experience of my end to yours, the viewer. When certain things are covered up because there's liability issues where, say, even sometimes somebody has did something, right? And say the school didn't know whatever, right? The school didn't know, how can I word this? Because that in fact makes a lot of sense from my end stating this to you, because all type of things happen that go on with individuals, right? Where they're killed and all the rest. And sometimes there do in fact be cover-ups. And yet with his situation, I don't necessarily think that was the case. No. I don't. I think something was in fact wrong with the footage. But I also think that if that mat that he chose to jump onto, because it was stated that the students were known to climb up on the mats as they were upright, that sort of thing you don't want to do. That can pose problems. You're getting stuck and locked inside of something like that, because to have something made of that material is to ask and question how tight and closed up was the mat. Wants to fall into something like that upright is to know you're going to get locked in. Which could be why his body was all bloated in the face. Asphyxiation and all that. That's almost in a form of strangulation. His face being that bloated is to say more than likely nobody has did that. Him falling in between that mat on the inside going down is to say there's not going to be no breathing with that. But more than likely there's going to be suffocation with that as well. Because to be all locked in like this is to say that in fact blocks the airways of the lungs, the breathing capacity, and all the rest. Remember, it's a closed in, enclosed mat. And depending on how far down you done feel, is to say, well, that's the end of that, as in a lifeless body to be towed. That's off the hook. But you do in fact have cover-ups, and I need to even have stated that. But I don't think that was one of those sort of situations. Yes, a school could have said, try to, cover themselves, even if a white male would have did that sort of thing. That's the questionable, and I stated that in the beginning, in the opening, right? How you do have racist individuals that say have a dislike and a dispassion for other people that don't match their skin tone, right? But there just seems like there's something more missing out. Yeah, even on the end. The edge with that. Because see, when I do an analysis, I study faces and all the rest. Didn't I say that sort of thing? To have a face all marked up like that is to say possibly a fight could have been involved with that, right? Or something. But some people might say, well, maybe not. Maybe the person took the time to kill him and then scratched up his face. But every time I see his face, I always think and consider how was the mat standing before he even got close to that. Notice his shoes is not even on his feet. And so once again, it's been stated that the mats were known to be upright as the students would jump up on the mats or whatnot, whatever with that. And I'm like in question, well, where was the shoes pertaining to that, and how upright was the mats? Were they leaning up against a wall? How do you just jump up on the mat and say, be on the mat trying to climb and get something or something, right? Even Johnson's story is all over the place. I'm saying it doesn't make sense or something. It's inconsistent. It's sketchy. It's inconsistent. Some might say inconclusive or something, right? That too, as in how you predict a death and all that. That doesn't make sense. Where sometimes they say, well, results is inconclusive, as in, whatever. And I'm using even that out of context, and yet his face doesn't seem or appear right. Yes, it in fact appears brutalized, as in victimized, right? But something else. First of all, so his bloated face. His face, in fact, up under, examination with that. His face, in fact, appears bloated. So I said once again, let me rewind back and retract with that. I'm asking, seeming his face appears so bloated, I want to ask, how tight was the mat enclosed, as in closed up? Because that could have led to positional asphyxiation. This leads to, the face being bloated, the bloated look. How did he get into the mat and all the rest? But depending on how he got into the mat and all the rest is to say the bloated face is going to be there even from the mat itself. People feel that he was all beat and banged up all up in the face. Yes. And I'm trying to question from my end, did he fall into the mat? That's what I'm trying to say and ask, making sense of something. Did he fall into the mat? Because see, even him falling into the mat and less gently is to say even scrape marks are going to be there. What is the point of people climbing onto mats and all that, right? Something don't make sense about this whole story. let me say this. Let me just look at this from an outside perspective and not in as in tilting the angle or even that, the box. Let me pause. I take this Rubik's Cube and think and trying to, let me see. So if a mat is standing upright and a child, I'm just going to call him a child because he was younger than me, right? He jumps up on that. That's to say that on the way down, he's going to possibly bang his face, his head first and all the rest, because to jump up on something is to know you could be standing up on something and say you slip or something on the way of a fall. And the fall down is to say you're going to fall into something such as a hole going down, which is in fact a mat awaiting you on the inside, and you're sinking through to the bottom. And yet while you're standing there, before you fall and say you trip or something, right, is to say you're going to bang your head and your face all the way up on the edges of the mat. I'm thinking and considering, was that or was that not the case? The bang up of the face and you're falling inside of a mat, but before you get there, you slip somehow and then you fall into something to become entrapped in something, right? And yet on the way down, before even you get to falling on the way down, is to say you bang your head into it, and that being the edges, the surface of the mat, which is where the scrapes could have came from. Scrapes is all on his face, right? And on his eye. It looks almost like a rug burn is what I'm trying to say. The scrapes on this young male's face looks in fact like a rug burn. And not like, say, him being victimized as in somebody else doing something, playing into the mess. Or say, yes, you can fight somebody and all the rest and have facial markings on you, bruises and all the rest, and scrapes like he has on his head and his face. And yet that once again doesn't look like that sort of thing. They in fact look like rug burns. Who don't know that sort of thing? I'm saying I scoured the net to try to see. And people are saying, well, yeah, that white male did whatever, the white male, whatever. And I'm looking at this like, it looks like rug burns. And in fact, look, I'm saying the facial aspect on his face looks too flat. The burn marks or whatever that is, it's not burn marks, but in fact, to rub up against something is to know it's going to rub like this in a flat manner. You see what I'm saying? If somebody fights you, they more likely gonna bang you in the face. Yes, that might in fact swell up your face or something like that. But once again, this photo has flat markings. That eye has a flat mark, like something went like this to his face. Know how to learn and understand, study in detail on a face, in which I do, right? The markings on his face is too flat. Now, somebody might feel, okay, since you said the markings are too flat and more likely they look like rug burns, then maybe that white individual who people are trying to accuse, right? Maybe he could have said, did something and then stuffed the body into the mat. Well, maybe that sort of thing played out. I don't even know. But I know his bruises are too flat. It's not a gash or anything like that. It's not, let me see. It's not like a beat mark or anything. That don't look like that. That looks like rug burns. Over and over I can sense and see that sort of thing. The rug burns. The forcing down of a face into a enclosed mat is going to burn the face, the flesh off the face. It just has to do that sort of thing. His face is and not only that, his arms have that sort of thing going on. And yet, what type of individual stands there and literally say kill an individual and then force his body down into a mat? I allow you, the viewer, to answer me on this sort of thing, because even that would take time. Because see, even a mat, more than likely when it was closed up, Kendrick Johnson wasn't a fat individual, just a little bit bulky on the arms and possibly on the legs, right? Not completely right. But that's to say that would have been work on the end of an individual forcing his body down into a enclosed mat. I'm thinking and sensing that if somebody would have did that, killed that young gentleman, and forced his body down into a enclosed mat, is to say that's going to once again take time. That sort of thing take time, shoving and pushing something inside of a mat, where either other individuals would have seen that sort of thing taking place. You just can't push somebody down in a mat and say, well, that's the end of that. No, because if his body gets stuck some type of way, remember, he would have been lifeless or something. Lifeless. Once a person dies, that's dead weight, right? That's an issue, as in you're pushing somebody into a mat, trying to shove him by his head and his face, trying to push him down, right? That would more than likely have taken time. I can see that sort of thing happening. Taking you forever because, see, once a body is dead, it goes limpless. It's not like it's firm, like rigor mortis is there, as in you can just shove somebody down by the head and push them into a mat. Yes, from the top or the edge of the mat. No. The only way to be able to do that sort of thing and force a dead body to go down like that, with it being limpless and that mat being that tightly closed, is to say rigor mortis or something. Because you're pushing something in a straight line, and yet for something to be dead and just dead is to know it's not stiff. So the body is going to be loosely hanging all over the place. Despite it not hanging, it's just going to be laying there. One of the limbs would have blocked the individual from being able to push the body all the way down in the mat. Who don't know that sort of thing? That's off the hook. Who wouldn't have known that sort of thing? You can't just push a dead body down into a tightly closed, enclosed mat like that. That sort of thing ain't I'm saying, because see, the reason why his face is so bloated is because of the mat itself. That's asphyxiation. That's when you're closed up. I stated that when it's too tight, too closed up, and a dead body, whatever is going down. Remember, there's gases inside of the body. Gases are in fact released inside of a dead body on the way out. They're inside of the body once the individual is dead, and they have to come out. That would in fact help to blow the face as well, especially when there's gases inside of a dead body that needs to come out, and there's nowhere for the gases to go but inside the mat. You're enclosed dead inside of a mat, and gases are coming up out of you through the mouth and the nostril. They're seeping out. Those are deadly gases, despite even him being dead and gone, right? So that's going to in fact puff up the face and make it even more bloated with that. That's not an adjective from my end to theirs and them trying to decipher, but who don't know that? That's why everything is bloated. That's why even his arms is bloated. Dead bodies carry gases. Why didn't somebody come out in the media? They left you, the viewers, even trying to hang and be seated with that, as in they left y'all hanging with the jaw dropping on even my end to y'all out there not knowing, trying to pick and pull a piece stuff. Yes, it's completely clouded. Good evening. I help to solve things and even possibly cases on my end to theirs, even in which I don't even speak on. But gases were in fact there with this young gentleman's body being stuffed away, yes, in a mat, and possibly not even stuffed, could have in fact fell into the mat. And yet where do gases from inside of a body? Call and ask a coroner's office. Coroner's office, they would in fact tell you. So where did the gases escape to once again inside of Kendrick Johnson's body once he was there? And how long do gases escape from the body once somebody has died? Is it a day? Is it a 2 day? Is it a matter of hours between when somebody dies and they're carried off in spirit by the hands of God or something? When do all these gases in a dead body start to leak out? I need somebody to tell me on that and stop trying to piece stuff together in what you don't know about. I'm saying people go based off of word of mouth, and they don't already said this before. They don't ever take the time to research. To never take time to research anything is to be misguided and misled, and even that. Because the news is not going to tell you anything. That's not their position. The news and the global news and the stratosphere with even that is for the news not to release that sort of thing. They keep you guessing is what I'm trying to say, and that's their point. They're just to put out general information with that, as in what has happened, and let that be the end of that. And yet you can't blame them. You can't even blame a Discovery or even me. Right? I choose to pull apart stuff that don't make sense. And yet to be a failure in life is for somebody to get on the camera and say, well, you know, and then mislead and guide for even views. That thing you shouldn't want to do, because it make you look real stupid in the end. I'm saying if you're not a researcher, try not to even do that sort of thing. This male more than likely died by ways of falling into something or something in the form of a pit, which awaited him, and even he didn't know that it was coming. And then to be, yes, enclosed, almost like people want to say stuffed in, is to say that the body in fact holds oxygen. And yet once you're dead, everything has to be released. And once it does, the body is going to in fact bloat in the process. There's no escaping that sort of thing. Even in the detail, even in the guardrail, what I just spoke on. The facts, I'm saying, the statement and the testimony and the facts of what I'm saying. I seen his arms. I'm like, okay, well, to be trapped in that is to say. And not only that, the issue of, say, trying to force his body down and there being no stiff rigor mortis enough for you to push him all the way down. If you say killed him, somebody killing him in that form, I don't think that sort of thing took place. I think once again he fell down. It's to say once again to try to stuff a loose body, flimsy dead body into a mat, is to say that's going to be a no-go. As in somebody's going to have to be, say, at one end of the mat, at the top head where they put whoever in, such as a Kendrick Johnson. Say if somebody was to kill him, that's to say that somebody would have had to been at one end of the mat trying to force his lifeless loose body. That's like spaghetti trying to force something down into a mat. That's to say somebody would have had to been on one end of the mat, because there's no rigor mortis, as the body is not stiff enough to push it all the way through, right? And that's to say one person once again would have had to been at one end of the mat where his head was, and somebody else would have had to been at the other end, just enough to possibly pull even his feet even more further. And once again, somebody would have seen that sort of thing, even in it not being picked up in the coverage on a live surveillance tape or something. Just didn't believe I can see that. With a rigor mortis type of body, that sort of thing, yes, would in fact take hours or so. The real hardening, stiffening, where something is so easy just to be pushed or something. Once rigor mortis, it's hard for even funeral homes and all the rest of when they want to put a dead body in a casket pertaining to rigor mortis, where they use hammers and stuff to bang the kneecaps sometimes when people have died and their knees were up. I had a neighbor that died like that. They died, yes, and they had to pull him out on some type of gurney, yes, to take him off to the coroner's office. His knees was still up, and they had to use a hammer to break his knees so that he could be able to fit properly in a casket. You can't bury somebody in a casket with their knees still up, propped up like that, right? But yeah, rigor mortis would have been more easier to a killer to push a Kendrick Johnson's dead body down into a mat. I'm just saying. So, let me see. I said that about the bruises on the face and the scrapes, the rug burn approach, right? The tight mat that would say if Kendrick fell into the mat and he was alive and he got entrapped, in which I think he did, right? That would have determined how much even he would have been able to breathe. The tightness of the mat would have determined a lot much more, in which I ain't even saying. It would be able to determine I already said that about if he was dead and somebody pushed him down, that would have been the issue. Shoving his body to cover or something like that, that would have posed a problem. I'm thinking that would have taken two people And not just one killer, say, running on one end of the mat to push and shove him down, and then running to the other end of the mat to grab his feet to try to pull him down. Justin believes somebody would have seen that. And possibly a cop or something, because no, not in the school, but I know schools even have security guards where they peek into and all that other stuff, right? Maybe a security guard killed him. I don't know. FBI, check me out on that. Shouts out to the FBI. FBI tune in to me as well. They should. Quietly on the substance with that, right? FBI police might in fact want to check in on a security guard, even more pertaining to the surveillance, and say if a security guard might not have liked a Kendrick Johnson, or even if a Kendrick Johnson might have gotten smart in the mouth with even a security guard of the school. I don't know. But I don't think that sort of thing. Yes, FBI, yes, shouts out to you, Young Love, babies, and all the rest. The FBI, I'm saying. I don't play games with the FBI, no. They're just my friends, as in I give them tips and information pertaining to, yes, when stuff like this happen with these kids. Shouts out to CC. I should have did the regulation in the beginning pertaining to CC. Yeah, CC. But yeah, so yeah, that sort of thing, I don't think, yeah, security guard, I don't think that sort of thing played out. I think a slip and a fall led to the demise of Kendrick Johnson. That is messed up. I'm trying to think, would a killer be running back and forth? Yes, I take my time with even murder analysis. If it was a murder, is what I'm trying to say. But I myself, from my end to discovery, in fact, do murder analysis, right? But I'm trying to see how would that even look on the end of, say, a killer that, say, might have been in a gym with Kendrick Johnson or something. How would that be? If a killer was running from one end to the mat, yes, I'm repeating again and going there, and I should, right? Because I want even you to visually think of this. How would that look for a killer, say, to be on one end of a mat, stuffing a body down into a mat, whether alive or dead or something, and then running from that top end where Kendrick's head was, and then running to where his feet, or where they wanted his feet to be? Because, see, to have a individual such as a Kendrick Johnson and you put him inside of a mat, right, whether dead or alive, it's to say you could have wanted to shove him down. I stated that even before, right? And I'm thinking if he was too up above in the mat, such as his head being too further up above in the mat, and you wanted him pushed down more, it's to say more than likely somebody would have had to make their way up to where his feet was, just enough to pull him down or something, as in bend all the way down or something. Something don't seem right with even that. Something just don't seem, something seems like off in the clock. This video has to in fact be long because something ain't right. So it's stated or something that he jumped up on the mat or something, right? So where does another person fit in with somebody that jumps up on the mat or something? This don't seem, something that seems quite odd in that. So does two people hold hands jumping up on the mat or something? Because I'm thinking the weight of the mat is not going to be able to hold two individuals' weight. I'm just saying, I'm doing the analysis right now in my head. Right? So that would be to say if somebody did kill him, a murderer would have, yes, laid the mat down if the mat wasn't already laid down, right? On the ground. And yet that just don't seem right. That don't seem right for somebody to kill this kid and try to stuff him into a mat. That just don't seem right. That sounds like a complete odd possibility. As in there's no way with that sort of thing taking place. As in the outcome. There's no way with that sort of thing being the outcome. That's so sad that a life has been lost in that way. Not in nobody putting him in there, no, and him falling in. That is off the hook. That's completely, let me see. Because that's not that ain't no way for you to even be trying to, it would have had to take two people, I'm thinking. Cause even the size of his body, when I looked at his photos and how long he was, the tall and the length, and not really too bulky and not too skinny, there would have had to be two people trying to, yes, put him in. Cause then you gotta put, if somebody stuffed him, you gotta put the legs in, right? And you're gonna be fumbling all like that, right? And if they would have did that, say while he was alive, more likely he would have been screaming or something, which is why I said two people would have had to do that. If they did, because his mouth would have had to been closed up. Somebody would have had to close and shut his mouth, put their hand over his mouth to prevent him from screaming, as one put his lifeless, or not lifeless if he was alive, put his legs down into the mat, somebody holding his mouth, right? Somebody holding his mouth and them shoving him into the mat. Yeah, so what took one person to hold his mouth closed, as another person was shoving him down, and yet more likely he was dead before even all that took place, right? Because screaming would have went with that sort of thing, right? And yet if you fall into a mat by accident or something like that crazy, such as a freak accident, it's possibly one of those things, a freak accident, which could be why nobody is able to make sense of how did it happen in the first place. It's more likely a freak accident is what I'm trying to say. Because once you fall into something like that, such as a pit, and you go down and it's too tight and enclosed or something, it's to say no breathing is going to be there enough. Oxygen getting into your body from the inside out just enough to be able to scream for somebody to come help and rescue you. It's too tight and closed in. My awareness is telling me that he wouldn't have been able to scream, because see, lungs and everything else everything is being compacted within the mat. And not only that, if he would have started to scream or holler or something like that, as in vocalize that he needed help or something, that more than likely would have possibly killed him even quicker and even further or something. I'm thinking. Because to be somewhere closed up in something and there's no oxygen to contain you, to keep you alive or something, right? There's nothing there to help, yes, withstand even the enclosed space, right? People right before they die or something, they try to hold on to as much air that they can within, yes, their airwaves and all the rest, right? They try to hold on to that sort of thing, right? And yet to be inside of something, you ain't gonna be able to scream, tattle or nothing if somebody tried to force you in there. Even if somebody forced him in there or something like that, he wouldn't have been able to scream. Let me say that. That would have been a no-go. That would have never happened. It would have, his screams and all the terror that would have went with that. Say if somebody did force him down and try to kill him with that, stuffing him into a mat, if he wasn't dead in the process before he was, say, possibly pushed into the mat, his screams would have been nothing more than muffled. Nothing would be there, because see, to have a mat wrapped around you is to in fact say you're encased by a sound barrier. That's in fact what that was, a sound barrier. I just pulled a loose string for those that don't know, to understand the scientific, as in, yes, the enclosed space. Once you fall into something like that, is say you're now drowned out. The sound barrier. I know all about that because of studio work in which I have done and did, and still do somewhat even today. The sound barrier. It's going to muffle out the sound and the sound effects of even somebody wanting to scream. That's tragic in itself. That's completely tragic. Oh, so yes, to you, the viewer question, I want you, the viewer, to question where was the shoes at. First of all, in my opening, I said, what was the mat stood up? Was a mat standing up? Because it was stated that many of the mats stood up, right? So I want you, the viewer, the question to analyze on your end, were the mats standing up straight or were they laying down on the ground, right? Not only that, question where did these kids keep their shoes at in relation to how far in distance away from the mats were the shoes kept? Were they kept up high on something or were they kept down on the ground or something, right? And I'm wondering, when it comes to the shoes of these students, who told them to put their shoes wherever they were? A school request pertaining to that sort of thing? Does a school tell you that there's a designated area to place your shoes away from something? What was going on that day and that time? I would so love to know what was going on during that day and that time on the end of even Kendrick Johnson and all the rest of these students, as in the formality of what was the activity. Why were they in the gym? What did all the activities consist of? Who all participated with that sort of thing? Who told them their shoes needed to be where the shoes were at? Because see, one of the things in the beginning when I heard asphyxiation, I was thinking from the beginning, well, maybe a student of some kind, maybe Kendrick Johnson was into wrestling. That was my first thought. Maybe he was into wrestling, and say there was an issue on another mat involving another student who was also into wrestling, and said they tussled or something like that or something, and then that student killed him by accident. And so to put that sort of thing away, such as a killing by accident or upon accident, is to stuff Kendrick in a mat or something to make it look like that individual couldn't have did it. Was Kendrick into only basketball or was he into wrestling as well? I might need to check more into that sort of thing, because even wrestling involves sometimes certain techniques and strategies to hold individuals down to the ground, and sometimes even that can cut off oxygen, or you can bang up against something, say within the person's neck, which can kill them in the process, right? And yet if it wasn't purpose, then it was accidental. The asphyxiation in relation to gym activities and what happened, and sometimes accidents being there by other students and them not saying, with that sort of thing. Because that's what I thought of when I first heard of asphyxiation. I'm repeating yes and I should, in case you missed it, as in you zoned out. I thought maybe Kendrick was into wrestling. I did. Outside of me thinking and considering maybe he fell into the hole. So I think that's all to be said about that. Kendrick, it was stated Kendrick was upside down for long periods of time when he was found, as in his body discovered. That too would in fact make a face bloated. It just has to, because all your blood is in fact pulling to your face, right? This whole scene is all mixed match and all the rest. That's off the hook. Because see, people be in gyms and stuff like that. That's why it's so hard to say. Because see, to know that a body is tipped upside down or something in a mat, whether the mat was standing up or whether it was whatever pertaining to the falling in or being pushed in, it's so hard to say with these sort of things. Because yes, blood is going to pull to your face, right? But not only that, people play all type of games even in the gym, and even students, right? They in fact play games, and even with students when they do certain things, as, oh, watch me do this or something like that, or let me try to do this or that, right? Not saying he did that sort of thing, because maybe a killer was in fact there, who knows, right? But sometimes students in fact get ahead of themselves, even in line, even pertaining to the game, of say them doing certain things. Yes, you've seen kids where they like, well, let me try this and let me do this. Sometimes they do it in front of other people, and sometimes they do it in front of themselves, just to do something stupid, and then it kills them in the process. Even in gymnasiums. But if that sort of thing played out, a freak accident or something, say if even Kendrick did that by accident, or maybe somebody murdered him. But what if Kendrick did that sort of thing, jumping into something or something, right? People do all type of things. Strange things, right? Random strange things, and then sometimes it kills you. I've seen people photograph themselves on tall buildings, skyscrapers, right? Standing at the top, photographing themselves just so they can put it on social media and then fall to their death in the process. You see what I'm saying? And then it's an embarrassment on the family because people be wondering, well, why would you do that sort of thing in the first place? But with the accident, say if Kendrick, this was an accident on his own end, right? And say nobody killed him, would the school cover that up once again to try to prevent a liability issue on the end of a lawsuit or something? That's just a question. That's not saying that sort of thing happened. No, it's questioning. I'm always questioning. If Kendrick had an accident or something and it was on the end of the school, would they try to cover themselves to prevent liability lawsuit issues or something by erasing certain things out of the tape? Because see, accidents happen every day, even on a job, for people in which even is prone to be covered up. And I said that in the opening, right? But no school, business, or anything want to really be a part of that sort of thing, as in the issues sometimes that come later when even sometimes students or job employees or something say fuck up or something like that. A school or something or a place of work will have to bear the brunt of that in the court, because even parents will try to sue them, which is why once again sometimes schools and work employers and stuff like that sometimes try to cover their own ass with that, and them not really saying, knowing who was killing who. That's why they try to cover their own ass, because no school or any place of work want to be sued by, say, a loving family, caring family of their own child, own kind, saying these parents come along and say, well, okay, so that happened to my child. Did somebody kill him? What happened? And not only that, why did the school have the mats over here in the first place, and this and this and that? Sometimes, not saying a petty end of a parent or anything like that, but these days people sue for all type of reasons, and sometimes even the wrong reasons, right? Despite it will be a right reason for the parents, even Kendrick Johnson's, to sue a school, even in tape footage or all the rest being missing or edited out. They could even sue for that, right? But once again, you do have businesses that do try to cover, because see, to know that a parent will try to sue for one thing is to say they might try to sue for everything, just to be suing because they're angry and bitter about so much stuff, right? And so that's messed up. But yeah, I want you, the viewer, to tell me, to try to make sense of this sort of thing pertaining to the mats. Man, I'm thinking if blood was pooling to this individual's face from him being upside down in the mat, that's to say, oh my goodness, that's to say his face should have been even more bloated. Because every particle of blood that's in the body is going to reach the face, and it's going to make it bigger, because the face can't withstand that even in death. And not only that, waste comes out with that as well. The waste and everything is set loose within the body once a person is dead and they're upside down or something in a mat. So all that fluid and all that just gonna sit and rest right in his face, and it did. So I think that's all to be said for now. I might look more further into that, because it don't even seem right. That's a scheme report from my end to yours, as in something about that. It's off. It is completely off. Somebody had, scheme report, stuff like that. That's what I should call them when it be the mystery, and you're like, well, who does that and who did that and why? That don't make sense. So yes, shouts out to CC ending out. We on the end out. CC probably sleep or something. You'll never even know. I'll be putting them to sleep, boy. Let me tell you. When a video get too long, yes. So recommended for you is in fact Homicide Hunter, Lieutenant Joe Kendall. That's my baby daddy and my other daddy on the way to be my daddy, something like that. Yeah, that's my love, Lieutenant Joe Kendall. Add to favorites is to click right here. Shouts out to Paula. Shouts out to a player. She got that Peggy Fox look, don't she though? Blood Relatives, Twisted, Red Rum, something like that. You shouldn't say I've been trained enough to know to, yes, not even say when I'm talking, and yes, sometimes I do it for unprofessional reasons to, yes, make it more humanly possible. The Perfect Murder, add to favorites right here. Someone You Thought You Knew, unlocked episodes. To Catch a Killer, season 1, episode 1. Add to watch later. You can click that. Twisted Sisters, season 1, episode 1. Blood Runs Code, season 1, episode 1. What Lies Beneath. Twisted, season 7, episode 3. Murders by Numbers. Yes, Murders by Numbers, season 2, episode 3. The Last Defense, season 1, episode 1, expiring in 17 days. On Last Night, Fatal Vows. Click this is to infect. It's going to infect. Make you sign in through your provider, whoever is your provider on the TV, with the TV and all the rest, right? ID Go original series. What is live now? What is happening right now in the live now area is in fact Your Worst Nightmare. That's what's airing right now. Schedule preview. Look at that. The Lock and Key. Once again, provider needed in order to get into that. Crime Feed News. Click this. It will in fact take you to the Crime Feed News. Yes, the crimefeed.com. It's in 2 different locations and it should be right. So to receive a newsletter is to type in your email address and click next, and you would in fact receive that. So I think that's all to be said for now. May Kendrick Johnson rest in peace. While yes, even his situation is still under investigation, and it should be. Stuff like that should never be allowed and left to die out, because that's too is how people get away if that sort of thing took place, such as a murder or anything. So yes, I'm gone.